Hey everyone! Happy Thursday evening. Welcome to episode 4 of that Halloween Kills movie book club. Tonight we'll be discussing chapters 16 through 20. One more episode after this, and we'll close out the novelization. And for those just joining or watching after the fact, we do this because we like to go through and compare certain differences that may be in the novelization than the movie, and vice versa. Stuff that might be in the movie might not be in the novelization. So, of course, when you're reading a novelization, there's always a lot more exposition and character development. So it's always kind of cool to see the things they do. And next 5 chapters we're doing tonight, there's a lot of cool stuff going on. A lot of familiar stuff to the film. Not too many differences. Subtle changes here and there, but fun nonetheless. Yes. So let's see who's in the chat here. Ryan, I'm out to eat with the family for my birthday. Hope you're having a good one, brother. Hey, man, I wish you happy birthday today on Facebook. Have a great birthday dinner. Good to see you, my friend. Enjoy. Hey, Chrissy, what's going on? Hello to you. And there's my man. No, you're the man. Lee's up from the other side of the pond, hanging out with us late. We have a cocktail in hand. I'm breaking out. It's hard to see here. Testing out my new Myers glass. It's got a little H2 Myers on there, but it's kind of hard to see. A little disappointing. You can see it when it's empty, but it's hard to see when it's full. Guess that just means I should empty it. Right? So tonight, we'll pick up in chapter 16. We left off 2 weeks ago, rather, with on chapter 15, with Lindsay passing out under the bridge. Because if you remember from our last episode, rather than just like the film, Lindsay goes and hides behind that big tree down by the water and hides from Michael, and then that's where they find her later on. Novelization, she goes underneath the bridge and hides and passes out there for a while. So that's how chapter 15 ended. Oh, chapter 15. Hey, there's the man. What's up, Byron? So let's pick up with 16. Now I've preloaded all, and these chapters don't have names. I usually just create a name after the fact based on what the subject matter basically is of that specific chapter. And chapter 16, I'm calling Michael's Display, which is something I talked about, I think, on a previous episode, I think it was the previous episode, how this brought that playfulness back. That's one thing the trilogy did bring back, as far as obviously getting the mask right, the movements by James Jude Courtney right, but also brought Michael's playfulness, that like animal instinct inside him. Like, what do animals do when they kill prey, or they kill, if you have a dog or a cat that's indoor and outdoor, what do? They kill an animal or like a mouse, and they leave it they leave it outside the stage for you to show you like a trophy. And that's the mindset that Michael has, like an animal. And that brought back in these 3 films, which I think was lacking in a lot of the other films. Still, because more people filtered. Hey, Mark, what's going on? Hey, what's going on? Excuse me while I cough. But hold on, somebody set me up online here. Oh, something totally different. So let's do this. Michael's Display. So, like I said, we left off at Lindsay, and they do find Lindsay. Well, they're going to find her in this chapter. So Karen's having a dream. It's weird. This chapter picks up with like a dream sequence. So Karen fell asleep at the hospital, and she's dreaming now. And she's dreaming that Michael killed Lori, Ray, and Allison and trapped her in the basement. So she's having a dream that she's the one trapped in the basement, like the ending of 2018. And he's looking at her, and she's trapped in the basement with the fire. So this is what's going on, because she's so exhausted, and she just takes a little bit of a nap in the hospital while, basically waiting for Allison to come back and Lori to wake up. The receptionist wakes her up to tell her that she can go see Lori. So wakes her from that dream, or rather, I would call it a nightmare, not necessarily a dream. That actually would have been a really cool dream sequence to have put in the film, right? To see her sleep in and basically have that whole setup of Lori's house and everything be reversed, where Michael's looking down and she's the one trapped down there. That would have been pretty cool to put in the film. So she goes and sees Lori because Lori's now awake, and she asks how you feeling, and she's sore, she's very groggy. She's asking where Allison is, and meanwhile she knows Allison went off with Lonnie and all them, and she doesn't want to say. She's like, oh, she must have just stepped out. And she reads the cards that's there that says, Mom, I got to go do this, sort of like the film, words to that effect, where saying that she went to help out. So let's see. So Karen, but she receives the note. Allison left that says she went with Cameron and Lonnie, and of course she's upset, and then she, just like in the film, she's deflects. What does she do? She sees all the bloody clothes that they still left in there, laying around, Lori's bloody clothes, and she's like, "How dare they just leave your bloody clothes here?" And she's sort of deflecting and basically trying to change the subject. And Lori is happy. So this is the scene. We did it. We killed Michael. Because what happens in the film, right? She doesn't want Lori to know, doesn't want to upset her, because she knows that Michael's still alive, but she doesn't want to tell her. She's not telling her about Michael. Lori says, she says, I'm so sorry about Ray, about what happened to him. So she's feeling remorse about what happened to Ray. And orderly wheels Frank into Lori's room, just like in the film. And now we flash to the park. So you see Lonnie and his crew pulling up, and they find Lindsay's car there, and Tommy's already there looking around for the body. He's not seeing anything. He's just seeing the car sitting there. So Allison and his actually I jumped the gun. Look at that. Lonnie and the crew are still driving around. So this is the scene that pretty much plays out just like the film. And Allison has a conversation with Lonnie and asks about, so you knew my dad, just like in the film. Oh yeah, your dad and I, he used to buy peyote from me, or I used to buy peyote from him. They reversed their stories, and talking about him. And of course, she gets all upset. And then that's when they see Lindsay's car, and they pull over, and they see Tommy there. They stop and call. They check Lindsay's car and see bullet holes and blood on it, and but no bodies. So they're wondering what the hell's going on. Tommy sees the bodies by the roundabout, where you see Marcus and Vanessa. So now it's just slightly different here. So I made sure I made notes of this. So on the roundabout was Marcus, like you see in the film, but he's not head to head with Vanessa. Vanessa is upside down on a slide, which would have been pretty cool. And Marion hanging from the swings, just like the film. So it's just subtle differences here and there. Not too much. Hold on, let's see what's going on. See some stuff going on in the chat. Yeah, that could have worked. Yeah, that scene, the scene of her dreaming with the role reversal in the burning house, the burning basement rather, that would have been cool. Byron says, I wish we got a good majority of the stuff that was in the novel from Kills in the actual movie, and the same goes for Ends, but we'll get there eventually. Yeah, I agree. There's a lot. This movie has some differences that I probably would have took those choices. Same thing here, like, with the dream sequence that I'm just mentioning. There's some subtle stuff that would have been cool if they put it in. But yeah, when we get to Ends, there's a lot of stuff in the Ends novelization that I really wish they would have put in the film. And they could have easily kept some of the stuff that was in the film and kept it in the novelization. Yeah. Senior age 45 illustration novels, very nice. Missed my age 45 edition, my 24 hours, nearly but Tuesday night. Yeah, they're all sold out. I guess they, enough people were buying them. The only thing I missed out on was that expensive one where everybody signed. It came with all the prints and proofs and stuff. But at the time, I'm like, I'm going to spend like $500-$600 on 3 books. So I said, hey, Matt Arch is in the house. What's up? So yeah, let's see where. So we're at the scene where Tommy, Cameron, Lonnie, and Allison, now they see the bodies displayed in the park. Okay, so where are we? See, Tommy sees. Okay, so they begin to look around for Lindsay, and they spot Lindsay covered in mud in a ditch, still alive. So she must have came up from underneath the bridge, because remember, she had passed out underneath the bridge previously. Lindsay's telling them what she saw and what happened, and how she hid from Mike. She ran from Michael, hid from him. Lindsay talking about how Myers brought them together, how they dared each other to go. Oh, she's talking about Lonnie now. How she's thinking how Myers brought them all together, and she's talking the scene that you see in the film where she's like, how they were all scared of Myers, and the only person that was dared go in the Myers house was Lonnie. Then Lonnie fesses up and says, "I lied. I never actually went in." The same as the film. So where are we now? So now they flash to Lori, and Lori's hearing all sorts of traffic outside her room, and she's wondering if it was reporters, because she doesn't know anything yet. She thinking reporters are there. Maybe they want to talk to her. They want to talk about Myers. She has no idea that Michael's still alive. So she's thinking about the interview she gave to Lonnie for his book, because, like I mentioned previously, Lonnie wrote books on Myers. And Lonnie also wrote books on like the paranormal and everything. And remember, we had that little scene in chapter 15 where Cameron actually apologized to his dad, because I guess all these years he thought he was crazy. And then now look what happens. Everything he kind of said, talked about, actually came true. So she's thinking to herself, well, if Lonnie decides to write another book about Michael's death, she would definitely be happy to do an interview about it, to talk all about it. Because, yeah, like I said, she does not know yet. Change my notes. So she's thinking about how her life will be now, and because now she's thinking positively about the future, because she's thinking he's gone. Now she can change her life, sort of like what she did in Ends, but we'll get there. And she's thinking how she always wanted to become a teacher. So she's thinking, maybe I'll go back to school, I'll become a teacher now. Now she can be more focused and straighten her life out now, because Michael's gone, supposedly. So she's thinking about where Karen is and how she's dealing with Ray's death, because Karen had left, to get some air, and she's wondering, is she okay? She wants to comfort her daughter, because, she just lost her husband, and she's thinking Ray was, she's reminiscing about Ray, thinking he was a little odd, but he loved her daughter and took care of her daughter, so she loved him for that. So Lori calling Frank to see if he's awake, because she was waiting for him to wake up to talk to him, just like in the film. And he wakes up, just like in the film, and they start talking about their date. Remember, they reminisce about how they all went on a date. And he says, well, I wish it were, I kissed you. I wish it was more, but I knew you were sweet on who? Ben Tramer. Just like the film. It's all pretty much verbatim is the film, this scene. And then she tells Michael, says to Frank, well, Michael's dead. We killed him. And of course, he says it's about time. And nurse comes in to give pain meds. Same scene plays out like the film. Lori says, make it a double, and she'll take some too. So that's how it plays out. Not too much of a difference in this chapter versus the film. Just some subtle differences. So that's chapter 16, Michael's display. Let's go to chapter 17. Chapter 17, I'm calling Lori Finds Out. All right. So I'll take a quick sip from my new Myers highball glass. What's Lee saying? Kills is joint number 2 with age 40 in my top 10. Love first 2. Sorry, but hated Ends. Reminded me of age 3. Where's Michael? Ends, I don't hate Ends. I'm just disappointed by it, because there's certain things in it that I do like, but I don't necessarily hate it. It's not really high up on my ranking list. There's, especially when we do the Ends novelization, and you'll see how you're going to get angry, because how much more Myers stuff is in Ends, and how much cool stuff they could have put to the film that they didn't. And you're going to scratch your head and say, well, why didn't you do this? So it's going to be real interesting. This has more character interactions. Yeah, absolutely. Most books do, to fill out the pages. They're going to give you a little bit more character development and flesh them out a little bit more about what you're thinking and setting the mood and the storyline. So that's why we talked about doing all these books. And so now we only have one more episode after this of Halloween Kills. Then 2 weeks 4 weeks, because in 2 weeks we'll do the last episode of this, and we'll go and do Ends. And Ends might be like 6 episodes, because it's I think I checked. I'm pretty sure it's the thickest of the 3. I think it's the longest of the 3 novelizations. And then after that, we might start doing just novelizations for Friday the 13th, even Elm Street. There's a Fog novelization. Let's see where this goes, because I do enjoy this. The only thing that sucks is a lot of those novelizations I do Audible, because I don't have time to sit and read. But we'll see where it goes from here. Once we finish the Halloween novelizations. Hey, Field of Screams, what's up? So let's see. So now, Laurie finds out. So now we flash to Barker, and everyone's out looking for Myers. Barker didn't believe in Myers. He just thought it was a myth. It's like this legacy thing, like this folklore that was held over Haddonfield, because obviously, it was 40 years ago, and he was not even a policeman at the time. So, and it doesn't make any mention if he even grew up in the town. So I don't know if he was alive, not necessarily alive, but even around during 78. So he was worried, and he was thinking he's worried people would form a mob, because the mob mentality. And then it shows him looking, and he sees. So apparently he didn't know Brackett. He knew who Brackett was, didn't know him. But there's a scene in here. There's a scene where he turns and sees Brackett at the hospital. He had no idea that Brackett worked at the hospital as a security guard. And Barker went over and talked to Brackett. And it's the scene like you see in the film, where he's telling Barker how he desecrated my daughter. He killed my daughter. I should have been there 40 years ago to put a bullet in his head, but I was too busy telling my wife that he killed our daughter. Same speech pretty much. And he's like, there's laws. He's like, and this is no time for prudence. He must be killed. So Barker worried about his own kids. So he starts thinking, like, I guess apparently Barker has kids, and obviously they didn't flesh his character out enough to let you know he had kids. But he's thinking, I guess he's getting in the mindset of Brackett, thinking, hey, I got kids too. So I sort of understand where he's coming from. But at the same time, he's got to balance that with the law. He just can't go out and become a vigilante, so to speak, which is what they did. And then the hospital starts to fill up, just like the film. Everybody's asking for help. They're asking the police for help to find out what's going on. The deputy's saying that they can't handle this scope, like you see in the film, and they're reaching out for backup from Russellville. This is where you see Oscar's mom come in, just like in the film, and she's crying. She's asking where her son is, because we know what happened to Oscar. And now this is the scene where Tommy wheels Lindsay in on the wheelchair, says, we need help. So just like the film, not too much difference there. So then Brackett sees Tommy, and Tommy tells him he had a run-in with Myers earlier, and about the murders, because it's not well known all the stuff he did, because obviously he just left the scene, and the police weren't even on the scene with Lindsay and Marion and Vanessa and Marcus's death. So he's telling Brackett everything that just happened. He's like, he's got to be stopped. We need to kill him. And Tommy asks Karen how Laurie is, and Karen is upset, asking where Allison is, saying, hey, you're here. Where's my daughter? So she's concerned and upset. Karen says he is coming. So this just like the conversation they had in the movie. Karen's saying, look, he's coming here. He's coming after her. And Tommy's like, well, how do you know? What makes you think that? How do you know that? Because obviously he saw what happened out there, and that wasn't by the hospital. He was on a mission to kill, not on a mission to get to the hospital. So Barker establishes a perimeter and puts the hospital on lockdown, just like the film. Tommy gives his speech. That's when he stands up and says, everybody, he's an apex predator. He must be stopped. The police have failed on all corners tonight. It's up to us to do this. And that starts the tagline. But I think, let me check the chat before we get there. Hey, Gene, what's up? Gene's awesome. Let's see. I'm in the morning today. Wife redecorated the front room and has moved my Halloween collection into the back room. Going to take me months sneaking it back in. Well, I don't know how your wife is down here. Obviously, you can see my collection. And my wife never comes down here. Very rarely does she come down here. She calls it my lair. So she has a room over here. My wife has a horse. She does horse riding and everything. So this room over here is her tack room. And so if she does pass through here, every once in a while, she'd be like, when did you get that? Where did this come from? What did you buy now? And I'm like, I know what you're talking about. She's like, no, that wasn't there last time. I'm like, it's been there this whole time. I just move stuff around. Yeah, deflect. That's what happens when you're an obsessive collector. Byron says Barker should have met his fate in Kills. Sorry, not sorry. Yeah, Barker was a buffoon. He really was. He was kind of a useless character. Not necessarily a useless character because there should have been a sheriff there. And I guess, obviously after the events of 78, Brackett losing his daughter, that really could have put him in a tailspin. And plus he's in his 80s. Of course, he would be retired. So there would be a different sheriff. But he was kind of a buffoon, like a politician. You're just kind of useless. But you definitely need a lair. So work on it. This is going to change probably maybe in the fall. Because for those that don't know, this is like this is a down finished living room. So down here is like an L shape. So I have all my stuff here. I'm also a guitar player. So over here is guitars. Over there is like a movie room. And in the back, we have a spare bedroom. So I'm going to change. So the kids naturally have no place to hang out down here because they used to, when they were younger, have sleepovers before I had all my stuff displayed. I used to keep a lot of this stuff boxed up for years. And then as they got older, creeped out and took over. But I'm going to create a room now. I'm going to redo the room in the corner, and I'm just going to have like a Halloween room. Just don't make your lair across the street in the sewer like Micah. Yeah. Frank Hawkins should have been the head honcho for them. Absolutely, I agree 100%, Byron. I don't understand why they didn't just have Hawkins as a sheriff. Because he could have been like a Sheriff Hunt, or Deputy Hunt, rather. Hunt was good. He was a good character. He wanted to help out. He did what he could to help Loomis. So he could have been that character, and they could have fleshed this out a little bit differently. And obviously, scenes with Hawkins, obviously getting the whole vehicle with Sartain. I mentioned it before. I actually was invested in Sartain. I thought he could have been a new Loomis had they not had the twist. Because when you met him and you listen to him speak, he sounded educated, like he really cared. He sounded like a Loomis. So I was like, okay, this is good. And then they had to have that twist. They could have figured out another way to get them together. Just my opinion. Oh, God, where did I leave off? Tommy says Barker established perimeter. Tommy gives his speech. I'll bracket. Oh, and they're talking, and just like I said, he's standing up. He's giving his whole speech. He's an apex predator. He's got to be stopped. Then Brackett comes and speaks up says he desecrated my daughter. He killed her. And then Brackett says, evil dies tonight. So he launched the nightmare of evil dies tonight. Damn Brackett. Damn it. So then Barker yells at Brackett, saying he is the law, not him. Tommy heads to Laurie's room. Karen's trying to stop him because she's afraid. Obviously, he's going to mention that Michael's still alive and what happened, and she doesn't want her to know. She doesn't want to upset her. She needs to rest. So Tommy heads there and sees Hawkins and then Laurie, and then Tommy tells Hawkins about the murders, and then he tells Laurie, about everything that happened and how he said same speech like the film, like you protected me 40 years ago. I'm going to protect you. Nothing's going to happen. Karen apologizes for not telling her because she's, of course, now Laurie's upset and mad. She's like, well, why don't you tell me? Like, how did he survive? What do you mean he survives? He's still alive. And then she kicks the nurse out. She says, get the fuck out of here. She kicks her out. Laurie says, we had him. How did he survive? Laurie says, we fight, Tommy. Go get him. So sends Tommy out, just like in the film. A lot of this is all the same. Karen tries to talk Laurie down, but she's dead on it, dead set on going out after Michael. And she pulls her IV out. She starts getting dressed, just like in the film. And then she sees the painkiller, which I wrote down the name of it, lidocaine, and then sticks it in her belly to numb the pain. And then actually takes a couple of the bottles with her, I guess, just in case. Then she says the speech, same as the film. Now, Laurie says, let him come for me. Let him take, like, how did I write it down? Did I write it backwards? Let him take my head as I take his. I can't even read my own sloppy handwriting. I apologize. Maybe the only way he will die is if I die, which is the same speech that she gave in the film. And Laurie grabs the knife and says he breathes, he kills, he dies tonight. I think that's how chapter Yeah, that's how chapter 17 ended. Let's check the chat. Dr. Sartain is Loomis in age 40, and Hawkins is Sheriff Brackett, driving around and even running Michael over like poor Ben. Like poor Ben Draper. Yeah, I think Sartain. You thought that's where it was going in 2018 because it was like a mirror image of Brackett driving with Loomis, right? Because who did he have? He had Sartain and Hawkins, and it would have played out perfectly. They could have just figured out a different way to get Laurie and Michael together, and they didn't need that twist. There's no reason for the doctor to be obsessed with Michael in that respect. Maybe obsessed trying to figure out what's up with him, sort of like Loomis was trying to keep him locked up and try to understand the mind of evil, but they didn't need that. It would have played out better as far as I'm concerned. But let's go to chapter 18. What am I calling chapter 18? What am I calling chapter 18? Oh, this is where it gets ugly. This is the part of the film I'm not a fan of because I don't think it was necessary and it was kind of unbelievable. But I'm calling it Tivoli's Mob. Yeah. To me, the low point of the film, in my opinion. So chapter 18 starts. Tivoli he makes it to the hospital like in the film, and he's got a cut on his head, his lips all bruised up, and you gotta remember he's like a simpleton, so he just needs help. He just wants to get back to the hospital. Truth be told, his hospital, Smith Grove. His feet are killing him from walking in the slippers, and it took him so long to get there because he had to keep hiding every time the police were coming by because he knew he'd be in trouble if the police found him. So it took him forever to get there because he'd see a cop car or people, he would hide. So it took a long time to get there. He was worried he would go to jail for crashing the car. He didn't seem like he was so much concerned about Smith's Grove. He was more concerned that he crashed the car and it was going to put him in jail. So he says to the crowd and the police, he sees, I wrote say, sorry, sloppy. He sees the crowd and the police and knew he had to sneak in. So he noticed people staring at him while he was walking in, just like the film. Like you see a guy in a sheet, he's got a couple of bruises on him. It's kind of weird. Although it's not too weird to see somebody like that walk into a hospital. I mean, he's walking into, looking for help. But it's still a little odd, I guess. So now we go inside Tivoli's mind. So if you remember from the previous episode, we found out why Tivoli is in Smith's Grove, right? So he had abusive parents who berated him and talked down to him and beat him. And he just snapped and killed his parents. That's why he's in Smith's Grove. So now I guess when he's on his meds, he's at bay. If you remember, we talked, I think, in the previous episode how Sartain gave him certain things to do to calm down his, what was it called? Defensive rage, I think it was. Defensive anger to sort of calm down so he doesn't get angry and he's sort of even keeled. But now he's off his meds. It's a lot of trauma going on. He's hurt. He's in pain. So now what is he? Now he hears his mother's voice in his head, because that was like the last episode. He hears his parents talking to him in his head and they're berating him. So his mother's voice speaks in his head saying, because you're like, he's thinking, why are they yelling at me, looking weird at me? And she's saying, it's because you're ugly and you're fat and the father says you're disgusting and filthy and they hate you. So obviously his parents must have been pretty bad. And then someone does ask it and says, hey, are you okay? And that's how that scene in the novelization stops, because now we flash right over to the Myers house, just like in the film. Let's see. Check the chat real quick. Byron says, instead of the stupid mob and kills, we could have got Corey Cunningham instead. You could have had a chase scene at the hospital where Michael is tracking Corey down. They could have figured out a way to introduce Corey. Maybe Corey could have been the vehicle, right? Because he was upset. He found Myers and he kept going back to Myers. What's to say he didn't get obsessed with Myers after all the stuff that happened to him? We could have found that all out, and maybe he could have figured out a way, like meeting Allison, knowing Laurie's background, and then what did he do? He tried to become Michael. What if he was to lead Michael to them? He could have been the vehicle, and it didn't have to be Sartain. There's a lot of different avenues they could have did. I think David Gordon Green did another homage to Halloween, as in the mob from H. Yeah, true. Did we mention that when we did the Easter eggs? I don't remember. We might not have. Of course, yeah. The obvious is 8. Yeah, exactly. Haddonfield Memorial Hospital. The mob subplot could have been executed with better writing, and it didn't have to be as extreme. It was a little bit far fetched. It would never happen in real life. I mean, obviously, this is all movies. None of this shit would happen in real life. But yeah, there was no reason. I think I mentioned it when we talked about kills once before. What was the logic behind the entire town seemed to be okay? Why were they congregating at the hospital? Right? And the move, if you remember in H2, what did they congregate when the town got angry? They congregated at the Myers house. Remember, they were throwing rocks at it, saying, burn it down, it needs to go. Why are they congregating at the hospital? They would have congregated maybe outside the police station, saying, hey, you guys screwed up again. What happened? Why aren't you doing something? They could have went to the Myers house, and logically, that would have been the place to go. Because from the events of 78, where did Myers go? Just like Lonnie says, he creeps, he kills, he goes home. Well, why didn't they go? Nobody went to Myers' house. Big John and Little John were just there hanging out, eating honey, smoking weed, and dancing. So why didn't somebody go there? Why is everybody congregating at the hospital? Yeah, it didn't make sense to me. Myron says the mob from Halloween 4 was smarter than the mob. Yeah, exactly. I agree. They needed Valium. Yeah, bro, they needed something because it was just crazy. Yeah, it's just a little far-fetched. That's the thing that's the part of this movie I really don't like. I don't like the whole hospital thing. The rest of the film, I like every part of it. The flashback is probably the highlight for me of all 3 movies. So now we're going, speaking of Myers' house, we're going to the Myers' house, and we're gonna go back to Big John, Little John. So Big John and Little John are, they're snacking, and Little John's hitting the joint, and they're just sitting on the couch, just like in the film, watching TV. Big John is eating the honey and talking about honeybees that his mother had. All that stuff's the same as the film. He says how his mom used to keep bees. Talks about how his mom was disappointed that, and this just a little bit more exposition on Big John rather. He talks about how his mom was disappointed that he was gay and she wouldn't have grandchildren, but they could just easily adopt. So he just reminiscing. Maybe it's the weed, maybe the alcohol. So then that's what, just like the film, what do? They hear a knock at the back door, and they're thinking, "Oh God, trick or treaters, go away!" It's too late to be trick or treating. So Little John says, "Okay, I'll go check it out." He goes there. There's nobody there, and then they hear a knock at the front door, just like the film. And so Big John grabs a golf club and opens the front door and goes out, and just like the film, and there's nobody there. And then Big John asks and says, "Did you lock the back door?" So Little John says, "Okay, let me go take a look." So he goes and looks, and the back door was open, and there was blood on the wall. So he goes to he says, "Someone's in our house." Excuse me. So now we're back to the hospital. So that's where it leaves us at the Myers house for the moment. Now Karen's following Lori out into the hospital, and Lori taking the lidocaine bottles with her, like I said before, and Lori looking for Tommy to go hunt down Myers. And of course, Karen's like, you need to rest. She's trying to talk her off the ledge, saying, "No, don't do this." Lori looks around and sees Tivoli through the window walking in. So she sees him. In the film, she's sort of looking over, and she sort of like gets a glimpse at him, and she's like, "I don't think that's him." So here she looks through, and she sees him walking around. People recognize him from the TV, so that's probably why they were chasing him, because you remember they showed Myers and they showed Tivoli, but they didn't say who was who. Well, they may have been blurred out. Who knows? But they knew he was one of the escaped inmates, and they just assumed it was Myers. And what do? Never assume. And then someone shouts, "It's Michael Myers," and then the place goes ape shit, just like in the film. Tommy starts shoving through the crowd towards Tivoli. Tivoli asking for help, saying, "Somebody please help me." People turning away from him because they're scared. They think it's Myers. And of course, right away, you should know, because Myers would just plow through you. He wouldn't be asking for help, for one. He wouldn't be shying. People wouldn't want to be anywhere near him. So it's just a little far-fetched. So he's pushing through the hallway, and because he's like in a rage. He's got like laser eyes. That's how they describe it, because he's dead set on getting him. So Tommy's yelling, Michael, stop, Michael, stop. And Tivoli wonders, he's thinking to himself, is Michael here too? Why is Michael here? Because he keeps hearing them say Michael. He doesn't realize that they're calling him Michael, and he has no idea why, or even an inkling that they're calling him Michael or mistake him for Michael. All right, things Michael would put. So he's thinking, and this is actually a pretty cool thought. So he's thinking, like, why would Michael be here? Michael wouldn't be at a hospital asking for help. Michael puts people in the hospital, is what he's thinking to himself, which I like that. That's pretty cool. And he knows Michael certainly wouldn't go to the hospital for help. So Tommy yells, evil dies tonight, and the crowd starts chanting it, just like in the film. I don't even want to think about it. So Laurie tries to see if it was Michael, and because she was doubting it, just like in the film, she wasn't sure if it was him, just from his walk and his size, she's thinking, which is, she's thinking logically. This is obviously not the man that's killing all these people. Plus, he'd be covered in blood. He's got no mask on, because they all know Michael Myers wears a mask. So let's see. Laurie says, wait. So she gets a good look and she says, wait, it's not him. So she knows for a fact it's not him now. And Laurie and Karen run with the mob towards Tivoli, and Laurie thinking it's not a crowd now. This is a mob, because she can't control it, and she's yelling, and nobody's paying attention. So that is how chapter 18 ends, with the mob going apeshit. Is the meaning to Big John, Little John a play on the size of their dicks? Just wondering. No. Actually, when the other chapters, they call them, I guess, with their friends, because since they're both Johns, they just never, I guess, when you say, hey, John, what's up? What happens? I used to have 2 friends I used to hang out with that were named Pat. So it was 3 Pats. So everybody just used to call us by our last name to identify, because it was 3 Pats. You say Pat, all 3 of us turn around. So with them, probably the same situation. So they figured, just because you remember, Little John is much smaller than Big John. So they thought it would be funny to just do it in reverse and call the littler John Big John and the Big John Little John, just to play on words. But they do make mention from the last episode. Did you watch it? When we went through the episode, Lee, where Little John played on the fact, saying, if people said, well, like, why do they call you Big John? And he would say, it's because of the size of my dick. So it's true. Christy says, I had a horror movie concept similar to and of violent nature, and I'm thinking of revamping it and bringing it. Yeah, there's a lot of people, we talked, Byron has been writing some stuff. There's another person in the chat the other night that said he wrote something. Who was it? I forget. I apologize if I forget your name. A lot of people writing some good stuff. And this era, you can really do a lot with it, where you can maybe even do like a fan film or flesh it out some way. And it's interesting stuff. And a lot of the stuff that people write tends to be sometimes a little bit, because if you're a fan, you're writing it as a fan. So you're putting everything in that a fan wants to read and everything that a fan wants to see. So David Gordon Green and Danny McBride, big Halloween fans. So they did put a lot in here because they are fans of the film. That's the reason they did this. Just some choices in the trilogy I wouldn't have gone with. So, but they did do it. I think that all in all, it's not a bad trilogy. Hey, Raccoon Eyes, how are you? All right, so that is the end of chapter 18. So let's go to chapter 19. And then chapter 19 is, it's not Michael, right? So let's see. So chapter 19 starts out, the mob is pushing through the doors and the staff holding them. They're trying to hold them back, and Tommy is at the front leading the charge, and they're pushing through. It's just complete mayhem, just like in the film. And Tommy's thinking to himself how this is, all the adrenaline's pumping through him. He's feeling no fear, because you would think logically he ran from Myers as a kid. Of course, he was a kid, but he knew what Myers was capable of. To think that he could stop him, it's a little far-fetched. So, but he's got this adrenaline. He's all pumped up from the crowd and everybody chanting. So that's what's pushing him. The mob is looking into the hallway and the room, so they're checking all the locate everywhere through the hospital, trying to find him. Laurie and Karen are wondering where Barker and Deputy Graham were, and they see them on the phone, like not even doing anything. And I guess they kind of saw the look on Laurie and Karen's face, like, I guess, like, what the fuck are you guys doing sitting here? Why don't you do something? So they get off the phone, and then Laurie is yelling, it's not him. You sheep. It's not him. just like in the film. So now we encounter a doctor who's running with the mob, and he's got a scalpel. I guess a little Easter egg to H2, and almost knocks Karen down. And then Laurie pushes him, and I guess as she pushes and brushes into him, it splits open her stitches, just like you see in the film. She starts bleeding, and then Laurie notices she's bleeding, and because her incision starts to hurt, and Karen calls for help and tries to get Laurie some help, just like in the film. And who comes? Deputy Graham comes and helps. So Karen is thinking how she knew it wasn't Michael just from Laurie describing him, because you got to remember it's 40 years of, not 40 years because Karen wasn't born yet, but however old Karen is in the film, which it doesn't make a mention of her age. Correct me if I'm wrong, but she grew up with the whole paranoia of Myers. So them talking, and she's described him, so she can visualize exactly what he looks like just from all the shit that Laurie put in her head over the years, because she got to look at him. She pulled his mask off. She saw his face, and I'm sure it was on TV at the time, and you could find it in books, and, about Myers or whatever, or about serial killers. So she knew what he looked like, and she was remembering Laurie describing it as a plain face, like stone, just blank, a motionless face, and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. So Laurie tells Barker and Graham it's not Michael. My wife, my mom's even said, and Laurie's saying, look, it's not him. It's definitely not him. So then Barker went to try and stop the mob and say, hey, look, it's not him. Cut the shit out, but of course nobody's listening, and he's trying to run through the crowd. They're totally ignoring him. So then they hear Graham's radio goes off and they hear one of the deputies saying he's up on the second floor. So they hear that. So Graham goes to try to stop the mob and help Barker as well. And Karen tells Laurie she's going to go help too. Stay here. You're hurt. I'll come back for you. So now we flash back to the Myers house. And you got Big John grabbing the small little paring knife, and the funny thing is that we're watching the movie and we're like, why didn't he grab a bigger knife? Grab something. Remember, he grabbed the golf club, which would have been better than that stupid paring knife. And he's thinking to himself as he's walking with this, like, why did I trade the golf club for this? So he actually thinks about why he did that. So let's see. Big John grabs a small knife, and he's thinking about why he dropped the driver and got this little small knife. So they start looking around. Big John goes upstairs, like in the film. Little John looks around downstairs, and they're doing that calling back and forth, like Big John, Little John, like sort of like their play on Marco Polo, just so they know each other is okay. Big John enters their study upstairs, just like in the film, and just out of the corner of his eye, he sees a dark figure, and just then Michael stabs him right underneath the arm, just like in the film. Which, who wants to get stabbed to begin with? But underneath your arm, Then he realizes it's Michael. Just right before Michael kills him, he's realizing, holy shit, this is actually Michael Myers. So that's like one of the last thoughts that goes through his head. And he tries to stab Michael, but then Michael drops his knife, and then what does he do? Just like in the film, he grabs his head, starts gouging his eyes out, pushing his eyes into his head, killing Big John. So Little John calls for Big John, and now he's not hearing a response. So now he knows something's up, and he's getting nervous. So he goes upstairs, just like the film, and he's thinking to himself, like a thought pops in his head, like, oh my God, this is Halloween night, because he sees the blood, somebody coming into the house. He's in the Myers house. So a fleeting thought in his head was, could this be Michael Myers? And he's like, no, no way, it couldn't be. So he did have that fleeting thought. So he's still calling, and he's still not getting a response. He's calling, Big John. So his mind is still wandering about, thinking about, God forbid, it's Michael Myers. Because, we know, especially when you're alone, sometimes your mind wanders and thinks about crazy shit. So then he goes and sees Big John. So now this would have been cool. Here in the film, he goes into the room, Judith's old bedroom, and sees Big John on the floor dead. Then he sees Michael staring out the window. So in the novelization, he goes into the study and he goes into Judith's room, and he sees Big John sitting with his back to him in front of the mirror, that mirror in Vanity. And he's just sitting there, like with his head tilted this way, and he's calling for him. He's not answering because he doesn't know anything's happened to him yet. So as he gets closer, he sees Big John's face is reflecting in the mirror and sees his eyes gouged out and his face all full of blood. So would have been a cool visual to see that. And he screams and he sees Michael. And so he screams, and as he gets closer, he looks in the mirror, and Michael comes from behind. He sees him in the mirror too. So this whole mirror thing would have been kind of cool. And Michael comes up from behind with his knife, and he's got his knife and Big John's little paring knife, and kills Little John. And that's how chapter 19 ends. See what's going on in the chat. See, yeah, his face. Yeah, it was shown on the TV in the bar. The only thing, I guess, because they blurred it out, so maybe they didn't have the names under it. But I don't see why they wouldn't have, right? Because people wouldn't know who Tivoli was, but they would know, sure as fuck know who, especially in Haddonfield, know who Michael Myers was. Feel the Scream says, I feel as though if Loomis was around, he never would have allowed the hospital riot to happen. He would have grabbed 2 guns from the police and figured out a way to get the mob's attention. He would have took charge. Yeah, he would have took charge, and I think had Hawkins been in charge, he would have took charge. The two of them together would have done a better job. Like I said, Barker was just a complete buffoon. And you guys are just answering each other. I'll take a sip, and then we'll go on to chapter 20. Chapter 20, I am calling... Oh, shit. I didn't write it down on my page, but I did do it up here, didn't I? So chapter 20 is, I'm calling, Hawkins could have stopped this, right? So where are we now? So Karen and Graham, Deputy Graham, are looking for Tivoli together. They're going through the stairwell, and they're trying to locate him together. They went down a different stairwell because the other stairwell that's covered with the mob, they're going in and out of the rooms as well, looking for him. And so what's happening is they're going in and out of the rooms, obviously rooms that have patients in them. So they're encountering patients coming running down the stairs because they're all frightened. Like, what is this mob doing? And they're all freaked out. So they're running from everybody. A woman patient says it's Michael Myers, and Karen says no, it's not. So then you see Barker in a different stairwell, and he's trying to stop them. So they flash him back and forth because he's trying to do something much more than they did in the film. And then he meets up with Graham and Karen, Deputy Graham, and they see Tommy pushing forward. Barker and Graham start pushing, towards Tommy to stop him. Tommy pushes them away, knocks them down, and he keeps pushing because he's, like I say, he's pumped with adrenaline. And he's just on a mission. And Karen says to him, "It's not him." He stops. Then he hears Graham's radio say where Tivoli was, and so he almost stopped for a second because he got out of that rage. There's rage, and he almost listened to Karen, and then he heard on the radio, "No, we found him," and it puts him right back into that mindset, and he starts pushing forward. So Karen's thinking about how she knew it wasn't Michael, and just from Lori describing him, and she's like, "I'm telling you, it's not him." Plain face like stone. So let me turn my page. So Karen pushes on to help stop them. Lori's back in her room, hearing all the noise and thinking about Karen. Like, I hope she's okay. I wish I could be with her because she tried, and look what happened. She ripped her stitches open. So Frank wakes up and asks what's going on because he's hearing this big commotion. He's like, "What the hell's all the noise?" And she says, just like in the film, it's all happening. It's Michael's masterpiece. And he's saying that this is what he created. This is what he wants. And then Frank says, "I could have stopped this." And so this is when we flash back to 78. And now we're seeing Michael step on the front. So this would have been a good scene to see also. So now we're in front of the Myers house, and we see Michael step onto the front porch. We just come outside, and he's already outside. So you see him step onto the front porch, and then he steps down, and then you see Loomis run inside and says, "Hawkins, did he kill again?" And he said, "No, it was an accident," because we knew what happened, but he didn't want to say. So Detective Tobias hits Michael with a nightstick twice and knocks Myers on the ground. So he's face down, and Tobias comes and removes his mask, takes his mask and holds his mask up, and the police start cheering. Hawkins is thinking about McCabe, what just happened, and because he's still in shock after shooting McCabe and killing him. And obviously they all think that Myers did it. that it was an accident. He was grabbing for his gun. So Loomis comes up and takes his gun and points it at Michael's head. And what does Hawkins say? He says, somewhere, I just thought to myself, somewhere inside that monster was somebody's baby boy. So as Loomis is aiming his gun at Michael's head, Loomis says, I'm sorry, Michael, this is the only way I can help you now. And he's just before he pulls the trigger, Hawkins says, don't shoot, runs to Loomis, pulling his arm up. He shoots in the air, just like in the film. So now we're back to 2018 because this is the story that he's telling Lori, that how he could have stopped this. And then she's reassuring him, saying, Frank says, now I know there's nothing inside him but pure evil. But at that time, I didn't know because obviously it hadn't gotten that far. Yeah, he killed 3 people, but there were people that killed a lot more before that. But he didn't realize he was pure evil. So Laurie's thinking about all the guilt Hawkins must have been living with all these years. Laurie reassures him, look, you're a good man. You were just doing your job. You were trying to do the right thing. You can't blame yourself for all these events. This is Michael. It's evil. It's nothing to do with you. You were trying to do the right thing. She talks about what Michael has done to this town, and she says, it needs to die. So Laurie says, and I'm the one that needs to kill him. So Karen and Barker, now we flash back to Karen, Barker, and Graham. They're still running up the stairs and looking around, trying to find him. They can't find anybody. Barker and Graham say, okay, we're going to split up. You go this way, I'll go that way. And Karen moves forward, going the other direction. And she spots Tivoli, and she sees him with this big gash on his head, and he's covered in sweat and some blood on his face, and she could see the terror in his eyes. He's absolutely frightened out of his skull. And she's like, how could you think this was Michael Myers? This is a frightened man. That's not Myers. So she tells him he has to get out of here because because they're going to kill him. So she takes him by the hand, and Tivoli asks if she could, and she says, can you help me? So she takes him, and she knows she's trying to take him to a place to try to hide him. But she's also thinking in her head, like, okay, I'm helping this guy. He was on the transport bus. He was in Smith's Grove. He must have done something to have been in Smith's Grove. So she's also on her guard because you just don't go to Smith's Grove because, it's happy-go-lucky. You're in there because you did something wrong, like probably killed somebody. So she's on her guard. But she wants to help him because she's a therapist. That's what she's trained to do, is to help people. So she's looking past that. So she tries to find a good place to hide him. She recognizes one of Allison's doctor's offices, Dr. Patel's office, because she had brought her there once before, I think, for a broken bone or a sprained ankle or something. I forget exactly what they said in the novelization. So she tells Tivoli to get inside and go to the back room and hide and lock the door behind you. So she turns to look for Barker and Graham and sees the mob head towards her, approaching with Tommy leading the way. And she's like, oh, fuck. That's what she's thinking to herself, because now it's like a stampede head towards her. And that's how chapter 20 ends. Look at that. We're hanging on a cliff. We're leaving on a cliffhanger this week. Well, for 2 weeks till we come back. So that's how chapter 20 ends. A little bit of a cliffhanger. I mean, obviously we know what happens because we've all seen the film. But pretty cool nonetheless. A little bit more backstory. One thing that's in this book that I wish they would have put the screen, there's a lot less evil dies tonight. You only hear it, let me think. I think you only hear it twice. If I'm mistaken, I should go back and count my notes up. I think you only hear it twice. So it's not repetitive and it's not as annoying as it was in the film. So that is how chapter 20 ends. That's that's as far as we're going to get this episode. So let me just take the banner down and see what's going on with the chat, and we'll hang for a little bit. What we got? If he had his umbrella, maybe he could have floated down. Exactly. Right, like Mary Poppins. He could have jumped down and just floated down. That was like his whoopee. Like an umbrella was like his whoopee. He felt safe. It was like something that covered him, and that's why if you remember from the previous episode or from the film, well, you don't really see it in the film. I have to go back and remember if you see an umbrella in Vanessa and Marcus's car, but he does have an umbrella in there because he managed to find one, and it's like a comfort thing for him, sort of like his whoopee. So next, 2 weeks from tonight, we'll meet again and we'll do chapters 21 to 25, and that'll close out the novelization. And I'm trying to remember because I have read this already. I'm trying to think of how much different the novelization is than the. So I do remember. I won't spoil it. There is one or two differences. You'll know when we get there. It's just a different scene that they used. Without trying to be too spoilery, if you haven't read the novelization, I don't want to do that. But that's everything for this episode. Hold on one second. Let's see. Just scrolling through. He looks like Penguin, both the character and he does. He looks like, I'm telling you, Penguin, like the Danny DeVito version from the OG Batman. And that was my biggest thing. It's like, well, how could you even mistake him for being Michael? Because there's got to be, I mean, it's supposed to be 40 years later. So it's 2018. Cell phones, cameras everywhere, so many different channels and whatnot. It's not like it was 40 years earlier. So there had to be pictures. There had to be, especially in Haddonfield. Lonnie wrote a book. Remember, Lonnie wrote a book about Myers. I'm sure it had pictures in there. How can anybody mistake him? So that was the weakest plot point of the trilogy, is the whole mistaking this guy for Myers. I think I mentioned, was it in my what ifs, that if you remember 2018 when the dad and Lumpy, the father and son, were driving and they fought and they come across the bus overturned and they almost hit the one inmate. The one inmate, if they would have used him as the foil, that would have made more sense. Go back and watch the film. He could have fit Myers' profile. But the Davoli, no. I mean, you to sort of confuse the two, you really kind of had to have two somewhat similar people. I don't understand where they were going with, that's like them mistaking me with my big beer belly as a tall, lanky Myers. Not necessarily tall, because Michael wasn't supposed to be tall. It was just the different build. It just didn't make sense. Say, don't know why. But yeah, it's just mob mentality. I guess that's the point they were trying to drive home. People just not saying the truth and they're just thinking, they're just focused on one thing, whether it's right or wrong. It's a mob mentality. He says, love tonight, guys. Always a pleasure meeting up with you all. See you on Friday. See you for Friday watch. Oh, yeah. So, I'll do a quick plug for that, and then I'm going to get out of here. So, yeah, if you guys want, come join us on Saturday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So this Saturday is the 40th anniversary of the release of Friday the 13th, the final chapter. So we're going to do a watch-along and celebrate one of our favorite films in that franchise. It's going to be a lot of fun, celebrating its 40th anniversary. It's a Saturday night. Don't have to work the next day. Maybe have a couple cocktails and just have some fun, and maybe do a little bit of trivia on the Friday the 13th. Maybe I'll break out the horror trivia, and we just do some, just have a good time while we're watching one of the better sequels in the franchise. So make sure you come back for that. And that's going to call it the night for me. I got a busy day at work. I actually have to do some work right now. So do me a favor. Hit that like button. If you like this kind of stuff, hit that like button. Like button does help. I always forget to ask people to try to do us a favor and hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed, you're a Halloween fan, you like horror, just a couple guys bullshitting, hit that subscribe button. Don't cost nothing. Helps a brother out. Raccoon, can't wait. Sounds like fun. Yeah, come back on Saturday night. Be fun. Chrissy, have a good night. Uh-oh. My cohort just got home. What's up, Moody? Mr. Moody. Mr. and Mrs. Moody. 2 a.m. Time for bed. That's right, man. Thanks for staying up, Lee. And we'll see everybody on Sunday night for the big watch along at 8. Joe says, hit the subscribe button. Pat is the best. See? Look at him. Who's better than Big Joe, huh? All right, so we're going to call it a night. Everybody, we'll see you guys on Saturday night for the watch along. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, all that happy horse shit. And I'll see you Saturday night. Have a good rest of your week.